Hey guys, we're going to do a math lesson by video today because we didn't have a chance to do a Zoom meeting earlier. So we're going to do a math lesson. So I'd like you to get to lesson 10. You can start on page 585, 586. We're going to be on those pages. I don't know how much work I'm going to have you do, but we'll just try it for now. So we're going to be dealing with customary length. Okay, so it's important that we understand. So the customary system, or English system sometimes it's called, is what we use. The other system that literally like everyone else in the world uses is called the metric system. It's funny, it's called the customary system. When I was a kid, it's called the English system because it was just like us in England and I think Laos that used it. But now England has gone over to the metric system. So England abandoned the English system. Now it's called the customary system. America is the only nation sticking around with it. When we deal with the metric system, I'll tell you why the metric system kind of is better. But anyway, let's deal with the customary system. We all know one of the things you need to know is you need to know all of your customary units. How many inches in a foot? How many inches are in a foot? You tell me. Let's see, I'll call on Riley. Riley, how many inches are in a foot? Yes, 12. Good job. And you also have to know how many feet are in a yard. How many feet in your yard? Cash, do you know how many feet are in a yard? There are 3 feet in a yard. And how many feet are in a mile? Anybody know how many feet are in a mile? Nobody knows. Okay, 5,280 feet in 1 mile. You need to know that. And you also need to know how many yards are in a mile. This one's a very difficult one. I don't think anybody knows this, right? Does anybody know how many yards are in a mile? No, you're all wrong. 1,760 yards in a mile. So you can find those on page 586 as well. So you need to know those as well. How many inches are in a foot, how many feet are in a yard, how many feet are in a mile, how many yards are in a mile. Those are the customary units of length you need to know. Well, we're going to be converting back and forth between them a lot. One of the things you need to know is with these examples, like, you know what, let's I'm going to skip over page 585. Go to 586. It says, the distance between the new high school and the football field is 2 miles. How does this distance compare to 10,000 feet? Okay, so we need to figure out what 2,000. So we have 2 miles. Let me write these down. 2 miles and 10,000 feet. Okay, so your first thought, if you disregard these units, you say, oh, 2 is way smaller than 10,000. But the problem is we have miles and feet, okay? Now we also obviously know that if I were to say somebody is, we don't know miles as well, but let's use inches and feet. If I were to say you could be, who's taller? Somebody who's 5 feet tall or 5 million inches tall. Obviously 5 million inches is way bigger than 5 feet, right? So the units do matter. If I were to say, I don't know, 2 feet or 3 inches, which is bigger? And obviously, 2 feet is bigger than 3 inches. And you could say, well, but 3 is bigger than 2. It doesn't matter. The unit is what matters along with the number. So we have to compare 10,000 feet to miles. So you have an option. Well, essentially, what we're doing in all of these examples is we're trying to get the units to match. Now, anybody remember earlier in the year when I said we have 2 different units, what do you automatically know we're going to be doing? Multiplication or division, okay? Automatically, if you have 2 different units. Like if I said, if in the example, I'm doing some math example, and my example is a certain number of bananas and a certain number of bananas, right? If you're reading the example and without even telling the example, it says blah, 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 3 bananas, blah, 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 4 bananas, and then it asks a question. Well, hearing 3 bananas and 4 bananas right there, that could be addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I don't know what it is, okay? But if I say something like blah, 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 3 bananas, blah, 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 4 trucks, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's completely different. It's probably going to be multiplication and division. The only time you'd have something different is if it says blah, 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 3 bananas, blah, 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 4 oranges. How many fruit do you, because the fruit encompasses both bananas and oranges. But if I said something like, if I have 2 different units and my question doesn't have a word that encompasses both of them, I know we're going to be dealing with multiplication and division. Here we have feet and we have miles, and we're trying to compare them. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change something over to feet or miles. Just like we had when you had like 2/3 and you had 1/4. You can't have thirds and fourths. You need to make them something that have the same denominator. You have to make them comparatively, the same. And so we would make them into twelfths, right? Well, here we have feet and miles. So what you could do is you can convert, let's say, okay, so let me put it again. 10,000 feet, I'll put them in a different order though, and 2 miles. Okay, 10,000 feet and 2 miles. So what we can do is, if you'd like, you could convert the feet to miles, but you'd end up with like a decimal, like it's like this point, this, or whatever. It would be really tricky to do. So the easiest thing to do is convert to the smaller unit. Let me say that again. The easier thing to do is to convert to the smaller unit, not the smaller number. Very different. Not the smaller number. Choose the smaller number. What's the smaller unit? Feet are the smaller unit. So you always want to, when you're doing conversion, you always want to convert down to the smaller unit. Feet is smaller, so convert miles into feet. You're going to leave the 10,000 feet what they are, just leave them there, put them in a box and leave them, 10,000 feet. But I want to make this 2 miles into something different. So my question is, 2 miles equals how many feet? 2 miles equals how many feet? That's my question. Okay, and I'm going to compare it to 10,000 feet. Okay, what we have to do is we would have to multiply, okay? When you are going, because, even though this is the tricky part, okay? When you're converting to a smaller unit, like miles are big and feet are small, you're going to multiply. The reason why you're going to multiply is think of the number of them that I can fit. If I have, my front yard, can I fit a larger number of miles in my front yard or a larger number of feet in my front yard? I can fit a larger number of feet in my front yard, right? A larger number of them. So what I'm going to do is multiply to get the number. So I take my conversion, and what is the conversion? The conversion is 1 mile is 5,280 feet. So I have 5,280 feet, okay? And I multiply that by how many miles I have. I have 2 miles. So do 5,280 times 2. And 0 times 2 is 0. 8 times 2 is 16. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. So it's 2 miles is 10,560 feet. So therefore we find out that 2 miles is actually bigger than 10,000 feet. Okay? And we would have to multiply there. Now there might be other times you'd have to divide. Let me figure out the other way. How many miles would 10,000 feet be? Let's say I wanted to go the other way. Okay? I would divide, because what I'm doing is I'm taking 10,000 and dividing it. Well, actually I can't do it that simply. I would take 10,000 and I would divide it by, this would be the harder way to do it, 10,000 divided by 5,280. I'd have to divide. That'd be tricky to do. Okay? I'm going to do an easier one. And so you divide it there. Let's say I said, is there an easier one over here? Let me do an easy one. Let's say I said, how do 22 feet compare to 8 yards? Okay? How do 22 feet compare to 8 yards? Which one's bigger? Okay, what I would do there is, what's the conversion of feet to yards? That's what you ask yourself. You say, what is the conversion? Well, we have 3 feet in 1 yard. Okay, so you always want to try to convert down if you can. 22 feet to 8 yards. So I'm going to change my 8 yards to feet. Okay, I'm going to change my 8 yards to feet. How I do that is I take my 8 yards and I multiply by the conversion factor. What is the conversion factor? 8 times 3 is 24. So 8 yards is 24 feet. So obviously, here I could put a less than sign, because 22 feet is less than 24 feet, isn't it? So 22 feet is less than 8 yards. Let's say I wanted to go the other way. Let's say I wanted to make 22 feet into yards. I would take 22 feet, okay, and I divide it by the conversion factor. You don't really need the feet on there. Okay, 22 divided by 3. 3 goes into 22 7 times. 7 times 3 is 21. 1. So you have 7 yards with 1 left over. Okay, that 1 left over is the feet. So 22 feet is 7 yards and 1 foot. Okay, that's kind of how you do that. And let's see what they have here for examples. Okay, so I would like you guys to do, for examples, on page 587, 1, 2, and 3. You're converting 2 miles to yards, so you're going to use the conversion factor 1,760. Number 2, you have 6 yards equals how many feet? You're going to use the conversion factor 3 feet equals 1 yard. And then number 3 is really tricky, okay, because you have 90 inches. What you need to do for that one is convert 90 inches to feet. Okay, you're going to remember, when you're converting down from a bigger one to a smaller one, you multiply, because the smaller one, there are more of them in that time. If you're converting from a smaller one, like inches to feet, you divide it to make, because the actual number is getting smaller, the number of them. So you divide, and your remainder will be, so you do 90 divided by 12, because 12 inches in a foot, and it's going to be some number, and your remainder will be the inches. Okay? That's what to do. See you 1, 2, and 3 on page 587.